Today we're going over these people who were eaten alive by circus animals, from a veteran crocodile wrestler who lost control in waist-deep water to a Colombian performer whose live snake act turned irreversible in minutes. But first, we begin in Romania, where a live tiger performance meant to impress a crowd ended in horror. It was April 19, 2016, when the evening air settled over a traveling circus encampment on the outskirts of Cluj-Napoca, Romania. The spring touring season had brought the small operation to a gravel lot in the industrial suburbs of Transylvania's largest city, where faded red and white canvas tents concealed aging equipment and animals that had performed the same routines for years. Daliana Codreanu was a 27-year-old aerial acrobat who had worked with the circus for 3 seasons, specializing in silk rope performances and trapeze work suspended high above the ring. She had trained at a performing arts school in Bucharest before financial pressures pushed her towards circus contracts rather than theater productions. The pay was inconsistent, but it provided enough income to support her mother, who lived in the nearby town of Turda. In early April, circus management decided to expand their Tiger Act in an attempt to compete with larger touring companies. Ticket sales had declined steadily over the previous 2 years, and adding a high-risk routine was viewed as a necessary draw. Daliana was selected to integrate aerial choreography with close proximity tiger positioning, a decision based on her physical conditioning and stage confidence, rather than any background working with dangerous animals. The handler assigned to oversee the rehearsals was Andrei Muntean, a 32-year-old recent hire whose documented experience involved managing horses at a traveling petting zoo. Circus management had accepted Muntean's paperwork without formal verification. A senior equipment manager had expressed concerns about accelerating the Tiger program, but the financial strain on the operation overrode hesitation. Investigators would later determine that Muntean's certification for handling large carnivores had been falsified. The tiger involved in the rehearsal was a 12-year-old male Bengal that had performed basic ring routines for most of his life. Transport between cities had been frequent that spring, and feeding schedules had become inconsistent due to cost-cutting measures. Veterinary logs later reviewed by authorities showed the tiger had lost approximately 40 pounds over the previous 6 months. No licensed wildlife veterinarian had examined the animal during that period. Reserve staff had also noted that the tiger's enclosure latch had begun sticking during transport, occasionally requiring force to close fully. While not considered a direct safety risk at the time, the mechanical wear reflected the broader pattern of deferred maintenance affecting both equipment and animal management protocols. Bengal tigers are among the largest felids in existence, with adult males typically weighing between 400 and 575 pounds. Their bite force exceeds 1,000 pounds per square inch, capable of crushing bone and tearing through muscle with immense force. Tigers are solitary ambush predators whose hunting responses are triggered primarily by sudden movement at close range. Captivity does not eliminate these predatory reflexes. It conditions behavioral compliance that can break under stress. When underfed, overstimulated, or exposed to unpredictable motion, a tiger's threshold for attack can drop rapidly. The rehearsal began at approximately 5:40 p.m. in the main performance ring. Daliana maintained distance while Muntean directed the tiger through familiar cues using a wooden training pole. For roughly 25 minutes, the positioning drills proceeded without visible incident. Several stage technicians and animal assistants were positioned around the perimeter of the tent, adjusting rigging and preparing equipment for the evening performance. The ring itself had no secondary containment barrier beyond the low perimeter boards used for choreography. The nearest hard exit gate was positioned behind a curtain line on the far side of the tent, requiring staff to cross open ring space to reach it. The circus kept a single fire extinguisher within the tent, mounted near a support beam, but no dedicated tranquilizer equipment was available on site. No emergency action plan had been established for the rehearsal, and none of the perimeter staff had been briefed on intervention procedures in the event of an animal breach. Muntean then instructed Daliana to move closer than in prior sessions, narrowing the gap to roughly 6 feet in preparation for a synchronized spin beneath a suspended silk. The distance was intended to create the illusion of danger, while maintaining what management believed was a controlled margin. The rehearsal plan lacked a formal stop signal and did not assign a second handler to control the tiger's line of movement if it broke routine. Staff later stated that the act relied on the assumption that the animal would remain oriented toward Muntean's pole and cues, even as Daliana's movement introduced sudden, high-contrast motion within striking range. Witnesses later reported that the tiger's ears flattened and its tail stiffened into sharp, rigid movements. The animal's posture lowered slightly, weight shifting forward. When Daliana executed a fast rotational step as choreographed, The abrupt motion triggered the response. The tiger covered the distance in less than a second. Its forepaws struck her upper body with enough force to knock her backward onto the packed dirt. Muntean struck the tiger's hindquarters with the wooden pole, but the impact failed to redirect its focus. The tiger lowered its head and clamped its jaws around Daliana's neck and upper shoulder. The bite compressed her airway and tore through major blood vessels along the side of her neck. She attempted to cry out, but the damage prevented any sustained sound. The tiger maintained a firm grip for several seconds, applying crushing pressure before readjusting its stance. Muntean continued striking the animal while shouting for assistance. Staff ran toward the ring entrance. Within approximately 90 seconds, an equipment handler retrieved a fire extinguisher mounted near a tent support beam and discharged the chemical spray directly toward the tiger's face. The sudden blast and cloud of irritant caused the animal to release its hold and retreat toward the far perimeter of the ring. The tiger did not attempt to re-engage. It paced briefly, coughing and blinking against the residue, while staff secured the enclosure gates and cleared the area. Daliana remained motionless on the ground. Emergency medical services were contacted immediately and arrived approximately 15 minutes later. She had sustained catastrophic neck trauma and had lost a critical volume of blood within a very short time. Resuscitation efforts were unsuccessful. Labor inspectors and animal welfare authorities launched a joint investigation the following day. Officials determined that Muntean lacked valid certification to handle large carnivores and that management had failed to verify his credentials. The circus was cited for multiple safety violations, and the use of big cats in future performances was prohibited under an emergency administrative order. While the Romanian circus had lost a performer to inadequate supervision and financial desperation, a veteran crocodile wrestler in Southeast Asia would soon discover that even decades of experience could not eliminate the risk posed by a powerful predator reacting in a single, irreversible moment. It was August 14, 2015, when the afternoon heat pressed down on a touring circus positioned on the outskirts of Chiang Mai, Thailand. The rainy season had begun weeks earlier, but the day remained intensely hot and humid, with temperatures exceeding 95 degrees Fahrenheit. The circus had established itself in a dirt lot near a secondary highway, drawing local families and foreign tourists with promises of exotic animal performances and traditional crocodile wrestling. Narong Srisawat was a 38-year-old crocodile wrestler whose performances had become the circus's primary attraction. He had spent 12 years working with saltwater crocodiles at small entertainment venues across Thailand, Cambodia, and Laos. The trade had been passed down from his father, who retired after losing 2 fingers in a bite incident years earlier. Narong had never suffered a life-threatening injury during his career, a record that gradually reduced his caution during familiar routines. The wrestling exhibition was performed twice daily inside a rectangular concrete pool measuring approximately 30 feet long and 20 feet wide, with water depths ranging between 4 and 7 feet. The filtration system had deteriorated over time, leaving the water heavily clouded and difficult to see through. The pool floor also sloped unevenly toward a deeper corner, and algae buildup made the concrete slick underfoot. Performers were expected to memorize the slope and maintain stable footing by moving slowly, but any sudden shift could push a wrestler into deeper water, where balance and leverage were harder to regain. The crocodile was a 14-foot male saltwater specimen that had been with the circus for 7 years, performing the same structured routine hundreds of times. The afternoon show drew roughly 80 spectators seated behind a waist-high concrete barrier topped with metal railings. The audience included Thai families and Western backpackers. A circus announcer provided commentary in Thai and basic English, emphasizing the danger while reassuring spectators that Narong was trained and experienced. 2 assistants stood at opposite ends of the pool, holding long aluminum poles, used to redirect the animal if necessary. Saltwater crocodiles are the largest living reptilian predators. Mature males in the wild can exceed 20 feet in length and weigh more than 2,000 pounds, though a 14-foot individual still possesses immense strength. Their bite force has been measured at over 3,700 pounds per square inch, powerful enough to crush bone. When they secure prey, they commonly employ the death roll, a spinning maneuver that disorients and subdues victims while maintaining a firm grip. Crocodiles respond reflexively to instability near their jaws, and once they clamp down, their instinct is to pull downward and maintain control until the target stops struggling. The performance began at approximately 3:15 p.m. Narong entered the pool barefoot and approached the crocodile as it rested on a shallow, submerged platform. The routine involved circling the animal, tapping its back and tail, and demonstrating apparent control through repeated physical contact. After several minutes, He moved into position beside the crocodile's head. Narong placed both hands over the animal's snout, applying downward pressure to keep the jaws closed while shifting his body partially across its back. It was a maneuver he had performed many times before. As he transferred his weight, the crocodile's tail lashed sideways with sudden force, striking Narong's lower legs and knocking him off balance. His grip on the snout loosened as he stumbled backward into deeper water where the pool floor sloped downward. The crocodile reacted immediately. It pivoted with a powerful thrust of its tail and snapped forward. The bite caught Narong across his left forearm and along the side of his torso. The pressure of the jaws crushed through muscle and fractured bone, pulling him off his feet. The crocodile initiated a death roll, spinning violently while maintaining its grip. The motion dragged Narong fully beneath the surface. The water churned as the animal completed several rapid rotations, using its body mass to wrench and subdue him. Blood mixed into the already clouded water, further reducing visibility. The two assistants moved along the perimeter, striking the water and the crocodile's flank with their poles in an attempt to interrupt the roll. The crocodile maintained its hold for roughly 20 seconds before pausing to adjust its grip. During that time, Narong was repeatedly pulled underwater and unable to regain stable footing. When the crocodile resurfaced, Narong's body drifted upward briefly before slipping back beneath the surface. His left arm showed extensive crushing trauma, and multiple ribs along the left side of his chest had likely been fractured by the initial bite. There was no large-scale dismemberment, but the injuries were catastrophic and consistent with severe compressive force. Additional workers, including a stagehand, activated a portable water pump positioned near the pool to create turbulence near the crocodile's head. Under continued prodding and disturbance, the crocodile released its grip and moved toward the far end of the pool, remaining partially submerged but no longer actively engaging. Narong was pulled from the water within minutes. He was unresponsive, having sustained massive internal injuries and significant blood loss. The time spent submerged would have rapidly deprived him of oxygen, and the crushing trauma to his chest would have severely compromised his ability to breathe, even if conscious. Emergency responders arrived approximately 15 minutes after being called, but resuscitation efforts were unsuccessful. Thai authorities closed the circus pending investigation. Officials cited inadequate safety protocols, deteriorated pool maintenance, and insufficient emergency safeguards. The crocodile was confiscated and transferred to a government wildlife facility for containment. While the Thai circus had lost its star performer during a routine that depended on precision and timing, a Brazilian welder would soon discover that improvised repairs inside a big cat enclosure could carry equally unforgiving consequences. It was February 7, 2015, when the morning heat was already oppressive in Recife, Brazil. The traveling circus had established itself in the working-class neighborhood of Casa Amarela, setting up on a vacant lot between aging apartment buildings and roadside shops. The operation was among the smallest still touring through northeastern Brazil, operating on thin margins and relying heavily on animal performances to draw paying crowds. Quirino Tavares was a 34-year-old welder and general laborer who worked intermittently for circuses and traveling shows across Pernambuco and neighboring states. His welding skills were self-taught, developed through years of repairing truck frames, carnival rides, and agricultural equipment. He had no formal training in handling dangerous animals, but maintenance workers in budget circus operations were rarely required to possess such qualifications. During the previous evening's performance, staff noticed that several vertical bars along the lion enclosure had rusted through near their base. The enclosure was a mobile cage unit built from welded steel bars and expanded metal panels, transported between venues on a flatbed trailer. Years of coastal humidity had corroded structural elements, weakening the frame. The repair needed to be completed before the 4 p.m. show, leaving Quirino fewer than 4 hours to assess the damage and weld reinforcement bars into place. Under standard safety practice, the lion would have been transferred to a secondary holding cage during maintenance. However, the backup cage had suffered frame damage during transport the previous week and was no longer considered secure. Circus management instructed workers to construct a temporary internal barrier to isolate the lion from the repair area. Stagehands stacked metal crowd control panels and thick wooden boards inside the enclosure, bracing them against the cage walls. From outside, the structure appeared stable. In reality, it was not anchored to the concrete floor, and the lower edges were unsecured. The lion was a 12-year-old male African lion weighing approximately 420 pounds. He had spent his entire life in circus captivity, performing limited routines and spending most of each day confined to the mobile cage. African lions are apex predators built for overpowering prey through strength and leverage. Adult males typically weigh between 330 and 550 pounds and possess powerful forelimbs designed to grapple and pin struggling animals. Their canine teeth can measure up to 3 inches in length, and their bite force is sufficient to fracture bone. While captive lions may become accustomed to routine human presence, they retain full predatory capability. Sudden disturbances, unstable barriers, or opportunities created by structural weakness can trigger rapid and forceful aggression. Quirino entered the cage at approximately 10:30 a.m., carrying a portable welding unit and replacement steel bars. The lion had been pacing behind the temporary barrier as preparations began, occasionally striking the panels with its forepaws. Quirino positioned himself within 2 feet of the corroded bars, crouching low as sparks from the welding torch illuminated the dim enclosure. About 20 minutes into the repair, sparks ignited a piece of oil-soaked cloth near the cage wall. A brief flare of flame and thick smoke filled the confined space. The lion reacted immediately. It lunged forward and slammed its weight against the temporary barrier. The stacked panels shifted. A second impact caused the upper section to tilt inward, and the bracing board slipped free. The entire structure collapsed toward Quirino. He dropped the welding torch and scrambled toward the cage door, which remained latched from the outside. Before he could reach it, the lion cleared the fallen panels in a single leap. The lion's jaws clamped onto Quirino's right thigh just above the knee. The bite crushed muscle and likely fractured the femur, causing severe bleeding from major vessels in the upper leg. Quirino fell forward as the lion pulled backward, dragging him across the concrete floor. Workers outside the enclosure began striking the cage bars with metal poles and shouting in an attempt to distract the animal. The lion released its grip momentarily, repositioned, and seized Quirino around the hip and lower back. Its forepaws pinned him as it applied crushing pressure with its jaws. A manager ran to retrieve a fire extinguisher while stagehands continued striking the bars. The lion maintained its hold for roughly 1 minute, shaking once and dragging Quirino several feet toward the rear corner of the cage. When he returned and discharged the extinguisher through the bars, the chemical spray struck the lion's face. The irritant caused the animal to release its grip and retreat several steps, blinking and pacing along the perimeter. Workers immediately unlocked the cage door and pulled Quirino clear of the enclosure. He was unresponsive and bleeding heavily from deep bite wounds to his leg and lower torso. The injury to his thigh had resulted in rapid blood loss, and the crushing trauma to his pelvis and ribs compounded the damage. Emergency medical services arrived approximately 22 minutes after the initial call. Despite resuscitation efforts, Quirino was pronounced dead at the scene due to catastrophic blood loss and internal injuries. Brazilian labor authorities and environmental officials launched a joint investigation. Inspectors documented multiple safety violations, including the use of an unsecured internal barrier and the failure to remove the lion during structural repairs. The circus was permanently shut down, and the lion was transferred to a licensed wildlife facility. While the Brazilian circus had compromised safety to preserve its schedule, a small Montana operation would soon learn that seasonal animal behavior could turn even a routine task into a fatal encounter. It was November 3, 2017, when the first hard frost settled over rural Montana, coating the grasslands outside the small town of Shelby in a thin layer of white that crunched underfoot. The roadside circus was little more than a cluster of aging trailers and portable animal pens arranged across 5 acres of leased land along a frontage road. The operation relied heavily on summer tourism and struggled to remain solvent once colder weather arrived. Stetson Braddock was a 29-year-old animal handler who had worked for the family-run circus since leaving community college 6 years earlier. His father had managed the operation before him, passing down animal handling methods through observation and repetition rather than formal certification. Stetson had helped raise the circus's grizzly bear from a cub 5 years earlier and believed that familiarity reduced the risk of serious incident. During the winter months, the circus maintained only a handful of animals on site, including the grizzly bear, several horses, and 2 miniature donkeys. The bear was housed in a reinforced enclosure constructed from welded steel livestock panels and heavy-gauge chain-link fencing, measuring approximately 20 feet by 20 feet, with a concrete base and a small wooden shelter positioned along the rear wall. In the weeks leading into November, feeding schedules had become inconsistent as the circus prepared for winter shutdown. While the bear was still being fed daily, portions had been reduced, and the nutritional quality of the meals had declined due to financial constraints. Investigators later noted that the caloric intake fell short of what a grizzly typically requires in late autumn. Grizzly bears in Montana commonly weigh between 400 and 790 pounds, depending on age and seasonal condition. In late fall, they enter a phase known as hyperphagia, during which their bodies drive them to consume significantly more calories in preparation for winter denning. This phase does not inherently increase aggression, but it heightens food motivation and reduces tolerance around food sources. A grizzly's bite force exceeds 1,100 pounds per square inch, and their forelimbs can deliver disabling blows. Once engaged in an attack, they rely on crushing force, repeated bites, and body weight to subdue threats. The afternoon feeding was scheduled for approximately 4:30 p.m. Stetson carried a 5-gallon bucket containing an estimated 25 to 30 pounds of mixed food, including surplus produce from a local grocery store, raw chicken pieces, and commercial kibble. He entered the enclosure through a gate secured with a chain and padlock. According to family protocol, handlers remained inside during feeding to demonstrate control and maintain proximity to the animal. The bear had been pacing along the perimeter before Stetson entered, alert to the scent of food. When the bucket's contents were emptied into a metal trough mounted against the enclosure wall, the bear moved toward it quickly and began eating. Stetson turned toward the gate, intending to exit once the bear was occupied. The bear consumed the food rapidly and soon lifted its head, orienting toward Stetson as he worked the chain with his back partially turned. The attack began with a powerful swipe from the bear's right forepaw, striking Stetson across the upper back and shoulders. The impact drove him forward into the steel frame of the gate. Before he could regain balance, the bear lunged and clamped its jaws around the back of his neck and shoulder. The bite delivered crushing force, severely damaging soft tissue and the bones of the neck. Stetson collapsed to the concrete surface. The bear released briefly, then re-engaged, biting into his side and rib cage while pinning him with its forelimbs. The attack lasted under a minute as the bear applied repeated bites and weight. Stetson's mother, Carol Braddock, 56, had been inside the office trailer approximately 100 yards away. The hum of a portable generator masked any sounds from the enclosure. When Stetson did not return within several minutes, she walked toward the pen to check on him. She arrived to find the bear positioned over Stetson's body near the rear corner of the enclosure. The animal had begun feeding. Carol retreated immediately and contacted emergency services. Sheriff's deputies arrived within approximately 12 minutes. Assessing the situation as an active threat in a confined space, a deputy used a patrol rifle to dispatch the bear before responders entered the enclosure to recover the body. Investigators determined that Stetson had sustained catastrophic neck trauma, severe internal injuries, and rapid blood loss. The combination of crushing force and continued mauling would have led to rapid loss of consciousness. He was pronounced deceased at the scene. State wildlife authorities and county labor officials cited the circus for unsafe animal handling practices, including the policy of entering the enclosure during feeding and inadequate separation protocols. The operation ceased permanently following the incident. While Montana's early winter had exposed the danger of complacency around a powerful predator driven by seasonal feeding instincts, a Colombian circus would soon demonstrate that even a well-fed constrictor, handled under routine conditions, could turn a live performance into a fatal encounter in a matter of minutes. It was June 22, 2013, when the evening humidity hung thick over the city of Cali, Colombia. The traveling circus had established itself in a neighborhood plaza on the city's southern edge, drawing crowds with promises of exotic animals and high-risk performances. The operation was mid-sized by regional standards, employing approximately 30 performers and support staff while touring through Colombia, Ecuador, and Panama. Heriberto Cifuentes was a 41-year-old animal handler whose specialty involved large constrictor snakes. He had spent 8 years working with reptiles at various circuses and wildlife exhibitions across South America. His performance style emphasized apparent danger, often allowing massive snakes to coil around his torso and shoulders while he addressed the audience. He had never experienced a serious incident during a live show. The centerpiece of Heriberto's act was an 18-foot reticulated python weighing approximately 190 pounds. The snake had been with the circus for 4 years after being purchased from a commercial breeding facility. It was housed in a temperature-controlled enclosure and typically fed a large meal every 2 to 3 weeks, consistent with common captive feeding schedules for a python of its size. The snake had not been fed for just over 2 weeks at the time of the performance, a normal interval rather than a prolonged deprivation. The routine required 2 assistants to carry the python into the ring inside a reinforced transport crate. One had prior experience handling boas and smaller pythons. The other was primarily an acrobat, but had assisted in reptile presentations during rehearsals. Once the crate was opened, the snake was lifted onto Heriberto's shoulders, where it began loosely wrapping portions of its body around him. The more experienced assistant remained within arm's reach to monitor coil placement and intervene if necessary. Reticulated pythons are among the longest snakes in the world, with exceptional individuals exceeding 20 feet. They are ambush predators that subdue prey through constriction. Rather than crushing bones, they apply sustained pressure around the body, disrupting blood circulation and causing a rapid drop in blood pressure. Research has shown that prey can lose consciousness in well under a minute due to circulatory collapse if constriction remains uninterrupted, with cardiac arrest following if pressure is sustained beyond that point. Large reticulated pythons possess immense muscular strength, and each coil can independently adjust pressure in response to movement. They do not exhibit mammalian-style aggression, but sudden instability or shifting support can trigger a reflexive tightening response. The evening performance began at approximately 7:30 p.m. before an audience of roughly 200 spectators seated around the circular ring. The announcer introduced Heriberto with dramatic narration as the two assistants transferred the python into position. The snake draped across Heriberto's back and chest without incident. Standard safety guidance among professional reptile handlers advises against allowing coils to settle high across the shoulders or near the neck without a second experienced handler maintaining constant control of the head. That precaution was loosely observed during rehearsals, but not strictly enforced during live performances. For several minutes, the routine proceeded normally. The python's coils remained loose as Heriberto rotated slowly to present different angles to the audience. He then shifted his stance to reposition one of the lower coils that had begun sliding downward toward his waist. As he lifted part of the snake's body, his balance shifted slightly. The change altered the python's support point. The snake responded reflexively, tightening multiple coils around his chest and upper arms to stabilize itself. Heriberto attempted to adjust the pressure manually, but the coils tightened further in response to his movement. The lead assistant stepped in immediately, attempting to lift one of the upper loops away from Heriberto's torso. As they struggled, one coil slid higher toward his shoulders and jawline, increasing pressure across his upper chest. Heriberto's breathing became visibly restricted. Witnesses later stated that he attempted to speak but produced only a strained sound. The second assistant moved to control the snake's head, while the lead assistant began working from the tail end, attempting to unwind the outermost coil. As the constriction continued, Heriberto's chest movements diminished. The sustained pressure around his torso severely impaired blood circulation, as well as his ability to draw a full breath. Loss of consciousness likely occurred first, caused by circulatory collapse as the coils disrupted blood flow to the brain. Within roughly 1 to 2 minutes of uninterrupted tightening, his body went limp and he dropped to one knee. Additional staff entered the ring, including a stage manager and an equipment handler. Together, they focused on unwrapping from the tail end while maintaining control of the head to prevent a defensive bite. The python's muscles did not rigidly lock, but they maintained dynamic pressure in response to resistance. With several adults pulling simultaneously, the outer coils gradually loosened. After approximately 3 minutes from the initial tightening, the pressure eased enough for staff to separate the snake from Heriberto's upper body. Heriberto was laid flat on the ring floor. He was unresponsive and showed no effective breathing. Emergency medical personnel stationed nearby for public safety entered immediately and began resuscitation efforts, initiating CPR and providing assisted ventilation. Despite continued resuscitation and rapid transport to a nearby hospital, Heriberto was pronounced dead approximately 40 minutes after the incident. Medical authorities determined that loss of consciousness had resulted from circulatory collapse during the constriction itself, and that cardiac arrest followed due to prolonged oxygen deprivation sustained during the minutes of tightening and the unavoidable delay before full ventilation could be restored. The combined duration of impaired circulation proved irreversible. An investigation concluded that the snake's feeding interval had been within normal parameters and that the fatal tightening was likely triggered by instability in positioning rather than hunger-driven aggression. Authorities prohibited the circus from using large constrictor snakes in future performances. Regional regulators later strengthened oversight requirements for exotic animal acts, mandating stricter safety protocols and certified handler training. The performance had been intended to demonstrate control over one of the world's largest snakes. Instead, it showed how quickly a reflexive tightening response from a powerful constrictor could escalate beyond human strength once multiple coils secured the chest and upper body in the confined space of a circus ring. Thanks for watching. Want to see more? Click on your screen now.